Now, with that said, Susan Crabtree is in the backdrop. And if you don't know who Susan Crabtree is, you will know who Susan Crabtree is. You know who she is, people, because I've been covering her for a long time. And now I finally get to get her on. She's here. All right, Susan, I'm bringing you in. Susan, how goes the battle?
Oh, goodness. It's been pretty crazy lately. But thank you so much for being flexible and waiting for me here.
Don't worry. It was funny. I was telling her I'm a totally neurotic person, and yes, I was like, she got a call that said she can't come on with me because I'm making too much noise. But the flip side also, you're making a bit of the noise, which I don't know if people are happy that you're making because they want it to get out, or they're angry and they're saying, Susan, stop being, stop putting the emphasis on that which we want to sweep under the rug. Before we even get into this, tell everybody who you are who may not know who you are.
Well, I am a national political reporter for Real Clear Politics, and I'm also an author of Fool's Gold. That's the book behind me. It's about California's demise, the radicals, con artists, and traitors who killed the California dream and now threaten us all. But last year, after the assassination attempt, all of my sources that I've been covering when I was at the White House exclusively during the Obama administration years, they came out of the woodwork and they started talking to me again and say they were furious about seeing these failures take place. And then one thing led to another, and all of these sources had information to share about what took place because they were absolutely livid to see their agency that they worked so hard for so many years fall into such disrepair and ignominy.
So you've been doing this for a very long time. When you get on one story, I mean, you've been covering this thoroughly, but I presume you're covering tangential. You cover other stuff in the meantime. It hasn't just been the Secret Service story for the last year.
No, my editors won't let me do that, even though that's where my heart is. But they said, Susan, I get covered the conflict between California and Trump, Gavin Newsom and Trump a lot. I cover lots of things. I cover religious freedom both internationally and domestically. Whatever. Actually, I have a lot of, they're pretty laissez-faire. I have a lot of personal leeway with my editors. And after 31 years in the business, I'm thankful for it. There's very few places, but Real Clear Politics does give me, let me do what I want, but I can't just do Secret Service exclusively, although I would love to right now. It seems like it comes and goes, how much people care about this. And it's frustrating to me because last year, of course, 2 months after the assassination attempt, it was amazing. People really did care about my reporting. And I was on Dan Bongino's show a lot, and that helped fuel the interest as well. So I'm thankful to Dan. But at the same time, now then it ebbed and flowed, right? I was still pursuing it, but it didn't seem like there was the interest level, both just generally, because there was so much happening, and in Congress. I honestly believe Congress, because Republicans control it, unfortunately, and not unfortunately, but because Congress controlled it, and there was a new administration coming in, the priorities were elsewhere, and they didn't really they wanted to give Sean Curran, the new director that Trump chose, very close to Trump, someone's very close to Trump. They wanted to give him a chance. And I was willing to give him a chance too, but not when these suspensions came out last week.
You mentioned like there wasn't that much interest in this. And I noticed that we all, I think, noticed that from the beginning, which in and of itself, is that not wildly suspicious to you? This is a failed assassination attempt on the president. And within 3 weeks of it, the media had effectively moved on. Now, we can understand why the media does it. They don't want to really make, lionize Trump going into the election cycle. But Republicans, how is it not like been something the object of continued scrutiny, criminal charges? Like, do you not find anything suspicious about the fact that even the Republicans don't seem to have as much of an interest in it as people still have in JFK's assassination?
Yes. I mean, I think that they were up to Rand Paul. I figured out what they were up to. They were producing a really solid report, was a gold mine. If I would, I would tell your readers that to go to the Senate Homeland Security Department webpage and look through that report, or look at my tweets, because I've read it for you, so you don't have to. I live tweeted it when I was reading it on Sunday, and it is a gold mine of material. And so that's what his Senate committee was up to. But, I covered the Secret Service after the Cartagena scandal, when they were all, they were found guilty of going and dealing with legal prostitutes, engaging in prostitution down in Colombia. And the fallout after that seems like it was bigger than this assassination attempt, if you can believe that. Because Jason Chaffetz, a congressman, now is a Fox News host, he never let them escape it. He grilled them. He hauled the director in and he grilled them time and time again and was constantly making news. But, you know, the secret, because of the timing, because it was a new administration and the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Rand Paul, has a lot to do. The Oversight Committee they're still cleaning up from the Russian hoax investigation, the Russian hoax situation. They're still playing cleanup over that. They have, you know, their priorities are completely diverted. And you know, you need someone solely, a designated member of Congress to investigate the Secret Service. There have been 2 congressional committees. You know, I thought that they were, did okay job. There was an independent review board, but Rand Paul's report, it verified so much of my reporting for the last year. And I'll tell you, those suspensions last week, like Helen Comparatori said, it was garbage. It's absolute garbage.
Yeah, we're going to get to that because I mean, I'm realizing now that the Comparator family is probably livid with the administration, but I don't want to. It's not a question of sowing discord. It's like I would be livid. I'm beyond livid. I mean, it's disheartening. But we're going to get there. How many assassination attempts have there been on Trump? Because there's Mar-a-Lago, there's Pennsylvania. Someone was mentioning there was an Iranian guy back years ago. How many have there been that are sort of confirmed or confirmable?
That's a good question. I mean, what level does it have to reach to get to assassination attempt? We know obviously there's 2. There's been other people that have wanted to. There's something I'm going to report either this week or next, which is another instance where it could have been an assassination attempt. So I would say there was a handful. Obviously, 1 month after the fact of Butler, the J-13, and 2 months, September 15th, you know, the fact that the Secret Service didn't sweep the outside perimeter of that golf course, Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach, that was absolutely absurd and a complete failure on the part of the
I'm gonna ask you the very political load. It's a very hot. Do you not get the impression that they wanted it to happen? Like, and I say they, and then there was like, who's the they? Why would his own Secret Service want to fail? This seems to be structural, but specific structural failings as relates to Trump, where it really feels like someone is coordinating so that it could happen. I mean, do you get that feeling?
Okay, well, I will tell you what I know. Jill Biden was hand-selected Kimberly Cheetle, the head of the Secret Service, who was following this outdated protocol, this completely ludicrous protocol that a former president, Donald Trump, doesn't deserve, even though he was the nominee at the time and has been, has tens of thousands of people coming to his rallies and broke the mold basically on any type of protocol. It should be threat-based. They were following this old protocol that he was like President Obama. Former presidents don't get the same level of security that sitting presidents and even first ladies get. Because as you know, David, he had Jill Biden had a competing event that day that was inside 400 people at an Italian-American dinner celebrating Italian-Americans. Nothing wrong with that. But I reported on J14 that event took away resources from the Trump event, the Trump rally. And in fact, and then they told me, the Secret Service said on Twitter to me directly, the press secretary said that you are very wrong, Susan. You're very wrong. And Fox News went with that story. Susan Crabtree's very wrong. So, and Keith Olbermann called me a fraud in my Twitter stream. And then by the end of that week, Senator Grassley had not only confirmed it, he had the receipts. He said they found that there was 3 to 4 times more post standards. That's the most elementary position you can have in the Secret Service. 3 or 4 more at the Joe Biden event than there was at the Trump event. Now they supplemented with local security, as we know, local law enforcement and Homeland Security people. But yes, so Kimberly Cheetle, getting back to your question, Kimberly Cheetle is a Jill Biden, hand-selected by her. They have a really close relationship. She was not following logic. She was not following the threat-based They always say they're threat based. This was not threat based. They knew there was an Iranian threat, and they still diverted the post standards to the Joe Biden event. So they didn't provide a counter surveillance unit. They only provided the counter snipers really late. Thank God they did. Thank God Sean Curran, the current director, was pushing back constantly and saying, we need more resources. We need more assets at not just on the campaign trail, but at Mar-a-Lago itself, because we know the Iranians are after us and all these other people with mental illness, and they're ratcheting up the rhetoric and calling Trump Hitler. So do I think that layers of, like Dan Bongino used to say, layers of failures and ineptitude, does that equal intention? Or was there something more nefarious going on? I think right now we can securely say that she wasn't giving it enough. It wasn't just even logical. It was completely ridiculous, following that old protocol. And, the second guy, Ron Rowe, who, got the job after her, was defending that policy. So, that doesn't make any sense to me. And if you want to say it's partisan, it was a political thing. I've heard that from many Secret Service agents that Kimberly Cheetle was anti-Trump. Yes, I have heard that.
First, I'll say one thing. Keith Olbermann is an outright misogynist. I notice who he decides to go crazy on the internet, and it happens to be women a lot of the time. He's a psychopath and a POS of the highest order. But the amazing thing is, at the time, and I remember this, the argument was that, or at least the suggestion was that there were resources that were being offered to Trump as an ex-president and not as a presidential candidate. And I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, at first it was denied and then it was admitted. And if you can, the idea is that he's a former president, set aside the fact that he's running for president again and one of the most politically relevant targets on earth. Kim Cheetle, who used to be in Secret Service for a couple of decades, got her job at PepsiCo as a result of the Bidens, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And selected by Jill Biden in the Secret Service for Joe Biden. Was she part of a Secret Service in the 2020 to 2024 period?
No, she was already director in 2021 or 22.
Okay.
She was back when he was vice president. She was very close to the Biden family because she was on that detail.
So she brings Kim Cheetle back in, and Kim Cheetle makes the decision, knowing that there's an Iranian threat, that they had classified intel that the Iranians wanted to get revenge on Trump for, I presume, for the Soleimani strike back in 2019, but maybe for other stuff as well.
Correct.
And they deny requests from Trump's Secret Service for additional support at various events.
Yeah.
That is confirmed. For
a year and a half. Yes. And Sean Curran, the current director, had the receipts. So he had them over a barrel, basically, when the assassination attempt happened. There was going to be no immediate firings of Sean Curran because he said, hey, you've been denying these security assets for a year and a half. For Mar-a-Lago as well. He finally got more for Mar-a-Lago, but they were doing it in piecemeal. Here's the situation. They were negligent in their duties. They were not worthy of trust and confidence. That's the Secret Service motto. They systematically denied to Trump. Think about this. They gave that guy who, so I don't know if, I think that in 2022, the Iranians put out a video that was a simulation of a drone attack on Donald Trump on a golf course. So every intelligence community person knows this. The Secret Service knows this. The Secret Service, when you become a detail person on Trump's detail, the first thing they do is up your security clearance so that you get access to all this information about the Iranian threats and every other threat against Donald Trump. So to tell me that you do not have the drone operator for Butler had 1 hour and was incredibly inexperienced and had to sit there on the tech help support.
But it was on like the retail side of DJI tech support, from what I remember.
Yes. Is that incredible?
No, but the way you describe it, it sounds like they facilitated a scenario where over an extended period of time it would happen and he would get killed, and by the grace of God he didn't. Because people have to understand this as well. Their excuse for not having drone technology, we're yesterday's technology today or whatever.
Yes,
they knew there was an Iranian drone threat. I saw the video. I've had discussions with people and said, like, I know how to use a drone. I was like, please make sure you're taking care of this. They had for previous events, they denied sniper cover. They had it for Pennsylvania.
Yes.
One question I'm asking
Barely
myself,
had it.
and we'll get into that as well, because the sniper, though a hero, might have been responsible for not securing that part of the roof. Question that right now: who determined the perimeter in Butler, Pennsylvania?
I believe it was the site agent Mio Perez and the lead agent Meredith Bank, with help from the counterpart Dana DeBray. So the three women, but they had supervisors who were men who didn't get punished. They got.
I just had to ask this: has anyone asked her why the Pac-Man perimeter? Has anyone asked that question?
Oh yeah. All the testimony from them is from their. They were involved with investigations with Congress, both the House and the Senate, and then independent review board. Everybody's asked them that. They basically said that they thought they were going to have roving police. It was a huge mistake, that perimeter, but roving police outside to prevent anybody from getting on the roof of the building or inside the building. They were going to close it off. And they positioned these counter snipers. They let them position themselves inside the building instead of on top of. They did not require them to be on top. In every diagram that they had leading up to this, and takes about 6 or 7 days to do advanced work for an event like this. They had that AGR building was not covered correctly. Now, interesting.
But if I may,
sure.
They literally walked through and they said, "We're going to make a nice circle. And we're going to carve out the roof of the AGR building," because you don't do that by accident. And the rationale would be, well, we're going to have roving police who are going to be able to see if something's going on. If that's the rationale, why even have a perimeter? Just have roving police.
Well, they have to have nowhere to put the magnometer, but it was a bad decision. It was a terrible decision because there was a fence line. The whole decision was because there was a fence line that was separating the AGR building out. But it wasn't like a huge fence or anything. It was a chain link fence. So these two women, Mio Perez and Meredith Bank. Mio was incredibly unserious agent. If you ask anybody in the Secret Service, she was known for her partying. She liked to go to the gym. She didn't show up to most of the meetings that week, or some of them with the locals. She posted from her assignments, the Secret Service assignments, selfies on Instagram. She had several complaints against her about that. I found one of them on her Facebook page before she shut down her Facebook page. And it was from Mar-a-Lago. I identified it as from Mar-a-Lago. And she said, "Work time, look at me. I'm a Secret Service agent." And she was doing that. And so why in the world would Sean Curran allow her to be in charge of this event? And okay, there's supervisors that are supposed to provide, oversight, and they're gonna check up on our work. Well, they didn't. Okay, when it came to the AGR building, they didn't ask. In fact, Meredith Bank, the more experienced agent who was in Pittsburgh, she's the lead agent. She's in charge of getting Donald Trump from the airport to the site and back to the airport, and she's in charge of working with the local law enforcement. So she's at fault too. They found her at fault, but she told the other female agent, Mio, "Hey, your boss, your supervisor is going to ask you how that roof is going to be covered. And you're going to have a way to tell him. You're going to have to tell him how you're going to cover that roof, that AGR building." Guess what? That supervisor never asked. Okay. And there was an inspector there from Inspections Division, which is supposed to be providing accountability and integrity, if you look on their website, for the entire Secret Service operations. He did not do his job. Those two supervisors, for that young experienced agent, they didn't take the fall. They skated and they got big promotions. One is the number 2 on Eric and Laura Donald Trump detail right now. And the other one is in charge of the Inspections Division. They got big promotions. Guess why? I think it's because they're friends with Curran.
Who makes the decision for them to get promotions? Because if I would say, if Don Jr. and family has trust in them and Trump has trust in Curran, some people are going to say, "Viva, who the hell are you to second guess?" I'll give you the reasons why in a second, but who determines that they get promotions?
Well, Sean Curran is a director. He has to sign off on them. I mean, there's internal people that are promoting from within, they make recommendations. Ultimately, it's up to the director who he wants to be surrounded by.
Okay, now, so let me ask you this. It goes back a bit to the beginning. Sean Curran complaining that requests for additional support were not coming from Kim Cheetle. Were not come from Kim Cheetle. I don't want to be unfair on Sean Curran, but at some point, if you're asking for additional support and it doesn't come, you don't go through with the event. Maybe that's my rationale, or you provide the additional support yourself. It sounds like they went through with the events and didn't provide the additional support themselves and just said, well, I asked and they said no, and now the blame is on them. Is that what happened?
That's sort of how the Secret Service is operating for the last year and a half, sadly enough.
Okay.
But they did have, so they asked they were going to work with locals to provide farm equipment to block the line of sight, big combines, trucks. And guess what? The White House, not the White House, but the campaign staff, now some of them are at the White House, objected. Okay. And the Secret Service backed down. I just wrote that story yesterday, so you can see it on our website, Real Clear Politics. So I said it's called the sloped roof saga takes a new turn, because everyone thought that was hilarious. That the reason why that wasn't covered was because it was a sloped roof, and that's why it got Cheetle forced out of her job. But now we're dealing with the reality on the ground that there's so much blame to go around. Okay. So even the campaign staff objected to the farm equipment being there. And instead of saying, hey, you know what? We need the farm equipment there. We don't have anything else that's better. That young female agents, those agents again, and their supervisors did not object strongly enough. They didn't find something that's just as good. They didn't require the locals to be on the roof.
I always think of the Steve Irwin when he died, and everyone's like, oh, he got stabbed in the heart by the spike on a stingray. It's like 1 in a million. I was like, yeah, but when you're constantly playing with 1 in a millions, lion gets him, alligator, whatever. When you're constantly playing with 1 in a million, you do something a million times, 1 in a million is going to occur. This really. I admit I have a bias. I think this was not just layered incompetence. I think this was facilitating what they knew would happen, and they would reap the political benefits without having to take any punishment for it. They were just like taking the chances every single time. And then the one time it went through, and by the grace of God, he survived that. And then it almost happened again 2 months later. Do you place, I'm going to ask a touchy question. Do you place any blame with Sean Curran?
I do place blame with Sean Curran. Sean Curran signed off on the security plan the day beforehand. Now he's got a big job, okay, and he has to delegate, or else you won't be able to protect Donald Trump adequately. He's in the inner circle, so he was Donald Trump's chief of his detail. So he's with them at every moment. That's why they have such a strong relationship, and that's why he was chosen for this job. But often it's a mistake to choose the Secret Service agent you're closest with, because then you get conflicts of interest. You're more motivated. Like, was Curran motivated by wanting to be the next director and not push back on anything that the campaign said, like, we need large equipment there, So who signed off on that? Was it, so you can't tell me that my sources in the Secret Service who are just incensed about this. So I call bullshit on that. I call bullshit on the fact that this young agent made that decision to cave to the campaign staff over the farm equipment without talking to her supervisor, Nick Menster, who now is at the Eric and Laura Trump detail. But they seem fine with having him there, So I would not want someone who shirked his duties like it's spelled out in these reports. This is not just my reporting now. It was before these Senate transcripts came out and the Senate reports came out. But now I was like, I know it was a solemn day for most people, and I recognized that on Sunday. It was a terrible commemoration of a terrible, horrific day in our history. Thank God Donald Trump survived, but Cory Comparatori did not. And I was looking at the reports going, this is Christmas in July for me. Gold mine. It's exactly what I thought was going on.
Yeah, it's on the one hand, vindication of your reporting, which I remember was being contradicted or denied at the time. Kim Cheetle, the sloped roof argument. Yeah, and I love the way you say it, because nobody wants to get sued for defamation. And the report concludes that Kim Cheetle lied to Congress. The sloped roof. Did she just pull that out of her proverbial tuchus? Or where did that excuse come from?
I'm told, yeah, it seems like it did, and then she got basically that was the reason why she was forced to resign. That itself, because the memes were just hilarious. One of the patches says Santa. It's like a military. It looks like a military patch that they made, Secret Service or military made, or some aficionados. It said Santa Claus, slope roof certified. Yes, Santa Claus has a gun. So where did that come from? So I'm told that they have this interesting relationship with the local law enforcement. They need them. They depend on them, especially when they're stretched thin during the campaign season. So they can't force them to cover a building. They can't force them up on a hot tin roof. They can't force them to cover us to be on the sloped roof. Okay. That's where that's coming from. But if that's the case, then request more counter snipers, right? We need them.
Or something to block. I mean, put up visual barriers. So it seems the campaign is asking for things that put Trump at risk. Secret Service is not denying it. And they're not providing what is necessary to make it possible. So like everyone is just basically saying, we're taking our chances with your life, President Trump, because we want this to be visually nice. And they're not giving us what we need. That's basically from the campaign to Secret Service to local law enforcement. Everybody's like, basically, screw it. We'll take our chances.
Well, I think that there is this idea, and Congress has backed this up, and the Independent Review Board. They said their investigations say there's this idea in Secret Service not to speak up. Okay, if you see something, say something. That's not part of the Secret Service culture. It's like we have a process, and we're not being aggressive, and there was too much deference paid to Donald Trump's the campaign optics. And no, if you see a problem here, you need to speak up. And this has to do with, I think, the culture of the Secret Service not wanting to. The supervisors not speaking up is because the supervisors, once you get into senior management, you want to keep going, right? You're already committed 15 years to the Secret Service. So you want to keep on the track, the career track. So you don't want to rock the boat. And there is a culture of corruption in the Secret Service that the senior members look out for one another, especially if you were on the counter assault team. Mm-hmm. If you were on the counter assault team, you get a pass on a lot of stuff. And we saw that during the Obama administration years. There's a lot of, not improper stuff that goes on in the Secret Service. You saw the other day what was going. I don't know if you saw that Project Veritas. Did you see that?
I did, but refresh my memory.
Oh, geez. So this was not a surprise to me at all, because the hiring has been lowered because there's low morale at the Secret Service since that big prostitution scandal in 2012. So they've been having hiring and retention problems. So they have to lower their standards. And they don't even have a mental health screening, if you can believe that, Secret Service. But so this guy, Project Veritas, had let it sting against a Secret Service uniform division guy at the White House. They're like the police of the White House. And this guy was texting an undercover woman, young woman, seemed like, and saying, hey, why don't you stop by the Secret Service? Why don't you stop by the White House? This is where I work. Take a snapshot. Look at me. And invited her to come over and said he could get her in to the White House. You have to have your Social Security ran by the White. Yeah,
I mean, they did. When I went there for a podcast row, they did a background check on me. Like it's a, oh my goodness! No, that was not the story I was thinking of. I hadn't heard that. So basically, so you and if it's like say an Iranian spy that wants to do something nefarious, if it's just a psychopath, or if it's it's amazing what people will do for sex. I don't understand it. Like every video that Project Veritas gets, it's somebody trying to hook up, doing something amazingly stupid.
Yes, so true. So true. But it wasn't a surprise to me, because the DEI policies, we haven't even gone into that, but the DEI at the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheetle pushed this DEI, and it was all of Biden. Biden had an executive director that was the opposite. executive order that was the opposite of Trump's executive order on DEI. He said, you got to make this priority number one, DEI, across the federal government. And Kimberly Cheetle wanted 30% women in the Secret Service by the year 2030. She signed on to a national pledge. And what I'm told is she got 24% by the time she left. And, if you can do it, if you have the strength and the commitment and you prove yourself as a woman, far be it from me to say no. But it should be based on merit. And we had, like I reported a month or so ago, a huge cat fight outside of the President Obama's residence between two female agents, and they were saying on the radio, one of the supervisor agent that was getting into a fight. So you better get a supervisor down here, one of my superiors, because I'm going to whoop this girl's ass. So she said about another agent.
There's so many jokes, and I can know where the internet is going to go with that. That story I remember. So let me ask you this then, Corey. We remember July 13 as though it was only the day that Trump survived. So, by that miracle, sanctions. What did they get? 42 days unpaid administrative leave, and someone got 10 days. We sort of forget or don't fully appreciate that a man was murdered, and from that family's perspective, for them to sit there and listen. Even to Trump say, yeah, I'm satisfied with the answers, but they should have had someone on the roof. Yeah, I'm satisfied with the answers, but they should have had communications between local law enforcement and Secret Service. They had a bad day. If I'm the Comparator family, I'm livid. I'm enraged, incensed with the government, and certainly with the outcome of that, which says, yeah, we're going to implement 62 policy changes, which are as common sense as like Boy Scouts would have known had they never had a day of training in their lives. Have you been in touch with the Comparator family? If you're allowed to tell me.
Yeah, no, I have not. I have been, I respect privacy, and I have focused my energy. That's not where I really wanted to go. I wanted to go where my sources were leading me, pulling the string. And that was about the layers of incompetence within the Secret Service. I'm not so much of a reporter who, I think at the Fox News, certainly what their feelings are legitimate, but it's not going to help my reporting to get into the emotional response to the problems, right? Mm-hmm. I want to know why the problems occurred. And I loved her interviews. I think, she was speaking. I felt like I have been a voice in the wilderness on this. And sometimes people thought like, well, why are you so adamant about this? It's because I know too much. And why aren't you outraged about this? And then I know at first people were, but it started to wane, I would say, during the inauguration, over Christmas, it waned. And we know, though, that at Christmas, I reported this, it was still on Donald Trump's mind. He had a Christmas party. You may have read this in my story coverage. Mm-hmm. A Christmas party at Mar-a-Lago with the Secret Service. And some of them, they were all there. Most of the detail was there because, the president was going to be there. But Mio Perez, the site agent that I told you was very unserious agent partier, posting from her assignments on social media. He said, there's someone that's not here. It's obvious that she's not here. And there's a reason for that. I don't want her anywhere near me. That's Donald Trump. He was still angry and upset about that situation, and he did not want her anywhere near him. Well, you know what I would say to Donald Trump and to Helen Comparatori, the supervisors they were supposed to be there to provide the layers of oversight. Why aren't you mad at them? And why are they getting off scot-free? And why are they getting promotions out of this?
The one thing I don't understand, I'll never understand it because it doesn't make sense. There was a solid 2 minutes and 3 seconds when the kid was on the roof, getting on the roof, had a gun, screaming, cops were getting involved. And there's no line of communication for immediate cover of the president on the stage. I mean, am I being unreasonable in thinking that that's unacceptable? Like walkie-talkies, immediate shelter and cover? Like, how does that happen? What was the excuse for that?
So, okay, the hero of the day, the counter sniper's name is David King, who took the kill shot for Thomas Crooks. He had to swing his his rifle over to take that shot because the other counter sniper that should have had the better shot, it was obscured by trees. Okay, because their plan was a wreck. The counter sniper plan is separate from the other plan, but they only had 2 days because they were dropped in 2 days before. So I sort of give them a slight pass, but they should have known that, the supervisor. So David King, they asked him, the congressional investigator said, why didn't you got a picture of Thomas Crooks on your phone? Or yeah, he had a picture of him. And from the local law enforcement, it finally got to him at 5:45. You had a picture. Why didn't you immediately contact Sean Curran, who was in the inner ring of the stage? Why didn't you contact the shift? They call it the shift, the inner ring that was protecting him, and tell them not to pull Donald Trump onto the stage? Well, this is the response of the supposed hero of the day. Well, there were other people to do that. I didn't need to do that. I mean, read the congressional testimony. I put it out in a tweet on Sunday. It just seems like it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not my responsibility. He was keeping an eye trying to find Thomas Crooks, to his credit, and he did shoot him. Okay,
but it doesn't. I mean, nobody wants to interrupt a good rally. They know that there's a threat on the loose. Take him off stage. I mean, cover him. The idea that, like, the iconic photo, and everyone gives credit to the Secret Service for jumping on Trump after the shots were off, but in any other universe, they're lying on a body. They're not lying on a human anymore. And it's not because of what they did that he survived. It's despite what they didn't do. Okay. What are the politics of all the players in here? Like, so we got what are the political leanings of these Secret Service employees? Do you have any indication of it other than Cheetle?
Well, Ron Rowe went to go work for Michael Chertoff. So that's very swampy. That was just in the last, I broke that story this past weekend. That's going to be a lucrative job for him. How nice, right? How nice that he gets to do that, even though he denied Trump assets. Now, Michael Chertoff, he was George W. Bush's second Homeland Security Secretary. So the second in existence. Then he worked for Obama. So, it's a swampy type of individual. He has an established career, but it's going to be lucrative job for Ron Rowe. Why would you hire Ron Rowe after his failures? I just don't understand that. So Ron Rowe was selected by Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. We know Mayorkas is a big Biden guy, obviously.
Mayorkas is a treasonous dog who belongs in jail, as far as I'm concerned. Sorry to get more political if you didn't want to go there. He's facilitated the invasion of America and deserves to be in jail.
I would endorse that. I would be fine endorsing that. And lied about it repeatedly. Right. So that's who selected Ron Rowe. Okay. So at the top level, we're talking about Biden people. We're talking about swampy people. And then when you get down to Sean Curran, he's really close with Donald Trump. I have no doubt that he cares about his security. Okay. But like Dan Bongino said before he was selected, when I was reporting and others were reporting who was in the mix, it was Bongino and Sean Curran. And I mentioned one other, a hero from 9/11 who was a Marine, who was a former Secret Service agent. But it was really Dan and Sean. So Dan said, it doesn't matter if he's close to Trump. He's not the right person for the job. He's not a change agent. He's a company man. He's a guy that made his way up in the ranks. You don't make your way up in the ranks in the Secret Service by ruffling feathers. I'm telling you that much. And he is not this guy that's going to have a big enough personality to institute the kind of changes that we need at the Secret Service. Now you see Dan, he's ruffling feathers over at the FBI, and we'll see what the outcome of that is. Hopefully it's for the right reasons, and hopefully we're going to see some of those Epstein files after this. The threats that were going on last week that he was going to resign, and he was taking time off to think about it, unless Bondi produced the goods. Or at least some more goods.
There's no more goods. We were told it's a big hoax now. Anything they produce is going to be tainted. I'm being glib, but
I mean, you cannot say, and I've said this before, even Dan, and I even slightly criticized Dan and Kash Patel, because they came out there and they even said, Dan has said that there's a loan that Thomas Crooks acted alone. Okay. He said in the same interview that he said that Epstein was a suicide. Okay. Well, you gotta tell. You can't just tell. You have to show. I mean, that's a basic principle of journalism and story and creative writing. You can't just tell people, the American people, there's no there. You have to show why we should agree with that, right? That's the American way. We need to know what happened. And so, and in the same capacity, I just don't think that Sean, I agree with Dan. I beg for, why have we not had a press conference laying out the reforms that the Secret Service wants to unveil? It's been working on.
Well,
I mean, at the very least.
I think because if you have a press conference to unveil those improvements, people are going to say, what the hell was the Secret Service doing the day before yesterday? Like the recommendations in that report are so basic. It's stupid and unbelievable that they were not already implemented and adhered to a T. They're basic common sense. And they're like, what the hell? What were they spending money on? Like, what was Secret Service doing if not what the improvements are intended to be? Oh, we're going to get a drone in the sky. We're going to have better counter snipers. What the hell were you doing before that? Okay, now you have only a few minutes left, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Crooks acting alone. Some people are going to say he did act alone because, law enforcement never intervened. This is a kid who was weird by all accounts, was training with firearms at a range that had lots of, I think, FBI and local law enforcement training at this shooting range. They haven't found any ties to Iran. They haven't found any ties to anybody else, as far as I know, as of now. Has there been any explanation for why? Not that I should expect the impossible from people, but a weird loner kid frequenting a shooting range on holidays many times a year. Nobody noticed it. Nobody said anything. Has there been any investigation into that?
I'm sure there has by the FBI, but they're not talking about it. And Senator Rand Paul mentioned this at the conclusion of his report. He said there was a glimpse of cooperation with the FBI in February when we had an initial meeting with them. His staffers did. But then nothing, stonewalling ever since February. Now, the FBI has been drinking from a fire hose, the leaders there, and they have other controversies. But you think they would care about who this guy is, and I'm sure they do care, and I'm sure Dan has gone over those and Kash. But why haven't you shown the American public anything involved in his encrypted apps? Thomas Crooks had foreign encrypted apps, several on his multiple cell phones. I don't know if your viewers know this, but this could have been a mass murder situation because he had a detonator and he had the explosive devices, the IEDs that he had in his car.
And some people were hypothesizing as to where a kid learns how to build an IED remote detonator. I mean, when we were kids, we had the Anarchist Cookbook. I think it's since gone online, but people were asking that question at the time.
Yeah, and there was still some back in his bedroom. If you look at some of the investigations, they'll show you that the FBI first went to his house and they found some more in his bedroom. They had to lock down the house because they were so worried when they found the IEDs were there. They had to take the family out and lock down the whole neighborhood. But so it's just strange credulity to think that this guy, I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I'm a journalist, so I try to go with the evidence, and I'll take the evidence wherever it goes. I'll pull on that string as far as I can. But he knew the place. He had cased the joint, the farm show, several days beforehand. He had flew a drone up that was undetected by the Secret Service. And so he knew exactly how to get on that air conditioner and get up on that roof. He knew exactly which one wasn't covered. And that to me is frightening. That to me is either he's a genius or he was acting with somebody else.
So it is a good point, because despite the Pac-Man perimeter, you would have had to have known that roof was the only unsecured one, and maybe he was smart enough to to foil the terrible plan where he knows, hey, one roof, the best one, doesn't have anybody on it, so that's where I'll go. After having had this idea to do it, pick that particular rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Amazing. Have you received any blowback? I don't know, blowback or any sort of treatment from the government for pursuing this doggedly?
Yes. I wouldn't say it's been anything I didn't expect. But they are watermarking emails now at the Secret Service, so that if somehow somebody gives one to me, because they have in the past, they'll know who gave it to me. They are launching witch hunts try to find out who my sources are. They had an email threatening the entire Secret Service with talking with reporters, i.e. me. So yeah, I know what they're doing. They're spending an inordinate amount of time telling me, trying to ferret out my sources rather than just demonstrating to the public that they have made these reforms and that they're serious about them. And Sean Kern has given a lot of softball interviews. I'm sorry to say, one was with Lara Trump, another was Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity talked the most of the time. He didn't there was no any hard questions, because you have to know this stuff. You have to have delved into it and have sources deeply rooted in the Secret Service to know which questions to ask. I give a lot of credit to the Rand Paul investigators, but why did it take 7 months this year to get that? Do you know, this is interesting thing about Sean Curran. So they had to subpoena the suspension records from the Secret Service, and they subpoenaed them on July 1st. And that's the only reason why we know there were 6 people suspended. That's the only reason why, because Rand Paul was doing his job, but he was doing it really late. I don't know why Senator Johnson sent out a subpoena last Friday. I love the fact that he did to the FBI. But why did he wait till the Friday before the 1-year anniversary to do it? I don't get that.
This is, I mean, one could argue that this looks like a little bit of lack of transparency, or they were trying to sweep under the rug the patheticness of the reprimands on those responsible, and the elevating of those who are even more responsible but didn't get spanked or slapped on the wrist. This is under the Trump administration. The question would be, why on God's green earth would there not be some sort of, like, not witch hunt, but mission to weed this out so that it never happens again under Trump's administration? Is there like a deep state element within the Secret Service, or is it just, bureaucracy, administrative bloat, waste, incompetence?
I would think, a deep state meaning an anti-Trump feeling.
Yeah, like
feeling.
I'm even floating the anti-Trump sentiment. Like, if you look at the FBI and it's got 33,000 employees, and if you say 75% are vehemently anti-Trump, like what element, what dynamic of that nature exists within the Secret Service?
I don't think that is as a big of a deal. It was during the Biden years. I think now, they laid off all the DEI employees.
Okay.
So they're on administrative leave, although Sean wouldn't tell me what happened to them. I asked the Secret Service last week, what's going on with these DEI guys that there was dozens of them. If you would not believe the website, how it was rainbow colored website, an internal website that they serve the DEI purposes. Like, if you ever have any problem, if you feel like you're being discriminated against in any way, we're here to help. And they sent, as you know, I think you probably saw this, but they sent people at the height of the campaign after the assassination attempts, they were sending people to Disneyland for an LGBTQ plus out and proud or something like that summit. And then I put that out there, so they limited the amount that the people that could go to just admin people, but they still sent them. They still use our taxpayer dollars to send them there. So, I just don't. I think Sean Kern's in cleanup mode from the last administration. There's still trans agents on the job that they're giving special privileges to, and I asked, hey, is Sean still believe that there should be trans agents in the Secret Service that if they are not giving special privileges to and accommodations, that if you're like a female agent, you identify as a man, then you they were asked that they only have to adhere to the female standards, the PT standards or training standards, and they were allotted that. I mean, this is happening under his leadership. So, either he doesn't know about it because it's so far removed, but I ask about it and I don't get answers. I don't.
No, it's on the one hand, it's like they want to conceal it feels like they want to conceal the incompetence. If I'm trying to be charitable, maybe they don't want to put it on blast so that people don't know just how incompetent the secrets. When they were having those committee hearings after the July 13 assassination attempt, I'm like, this is putting on blast. It's a public advertisement to any would-be assassin that this is how insanely incompetent Secret Service is. And if you're Iran, you're like, we didn't know it would be this easy. Maybe now we know the weaknesses. And
sad, yeah. I mean, I don't want to mean to laugh. I don't mean to smile and
no,
laugh.
but you either laugh or you cry because it's inexcusable, incompetent, and now a year later, slap on the wrist for 6 agents, and keep going back to comparator. I'm like, you should be livid if this is what you see as the consequences and call to action from that incompetence that led to Corey being murdered.
Yeah, I just hope that there's like a raising of the problem is there's so much the morale has been shot at the Secret Service. So now even hiring additional people has been difficult with retention bonuses of like 50 grand. So they're offering all these bonuses, but they're only getting people that 30% now don't have a college degree. Not that a college degree is the be all end all, but we want the best of the best, right? So all FBI agents have a college degree. So now 30% of the incoming class don't have one. And a lot of them are washing out of the class, not either washing out, they're hiring. I've been told, if you look at the change.org petition that I've been pushing out on my Twitter, there's an internal petition that's going on in Secret Service calling for more accountability and saying, well, whether Sharon Curran is the right man for this job. So I'm sure he hates me for putting that on my x.com, but that's coming from agents within the Secret Service. So as part of that, they show that some of the classmates, the new incoming recruits are obese. Some of them have mental health issues and there's no mental health screening. And a lot of agents now, the senior agents, especially, I'll say male and female senior agents, there's been a talent drain, a brain drain, because after this debacle, they wanted to go out. They wanted to leave. They're just sick of it, the cultural problems at the Secret Service. So they go to the Drug Enforcement Agency or they retire.
Is this your petition? Or the petition?
Not mine. It's certainly not mine, but it's something that I have covered and shared on my x.com.
No, sorry, I didn't mean it in an accusatory sense. I'll just I'll give everybody the link.
Well, I will tell you, they accused me of that, of working with one of the agents that is involved in that, and I don't even know who wrote it. To be honest, I mean, I do not know to this day. Now I know people who support it, who signed on to it, and who shared it with me, but I do not know the agent who wrote that. And they believe I'm working hand in glove with that agent. I'm not.
Susan, you're doing amazing work. Your book is Fool's Gold.
Yes.
I've given everybody the Amazon affiliate link. So is there another place where, do you have a website where it's, I don't know, people sometimes, okay, what's the web? Well, email me the website afterwards. I'll put it in the pinned comment, but for now, I'll give it to everybody here. You're doing amazing work. And I hope we can do this again when there's a follow-up, because the response has been farcical, and I'm convinced this was a let it happen on purpose, and we still don't know very much about Crooks, what was on his encrypted accounts, what was on why he had multiple phones. So I think there's a whole new chapter of the story that's going to come out sooner than later. So I'm sure you're going to be on it. Yes. Susan, you're on X. I'll put it again up in the pin, but your X account is Susan Crabtree. That is SUSAN Crabtree, at Susan Crabtree. Susan, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for keeping on this. You are, an outstanding interview, by the way, and I've enjoyed it immensely.
Ordinarily I would get into childhood, but I didn't know how much time we had. I need to see how people's origin story, but no, this was too much. We need to get into the flesh of this. So if you can come back on later, we can do this again, do some follow-ups as the situation progresses.
Sure thing. You've got it.